Okay, so just gonna start this live stream, see who comes in. If anybody can hear me, please let me know in the chat. All right, we got 6 people here, so please let me know if you can hear me in the chat. All right, so got 12 people. Okay, sounds good. Doing the best I can here. It's kind of a weird setup. I didn't have time to do it proper, but I didn't want to disappoint you guys. So we'll see how this one goes. All right, how's the screen look? You guys see the image okay? Tilt it. All right, that's probably the best it's gonna get, huh? Hold on a sec, let me try something. Is that better? All right, so yeah, that's probably about as good as it's gonna get, right? So what we're going over right now is I had this idea about fires in the old world and then the supposed fires of the reset kind of period, late 1800s, early 1900s. And I was gonna do a normal video, but I decided that I'd do this live stream and kind of explain it to you guys live, see how that goes, and then maybe I'll do a non-live video as well. So, the fall of Rome, the burning of Rome, we all know the story, and Carthage and all that, and Nero playing his fiddle. I'm just kind of rambling just to see who else comes in before we start going through the pictures. And so, obviously you can see the picture here is of Rome, the classic painting, you know. And I'm just gonna kind of go through some images randomly. Hello Irish Eyes, thanks for joining. Hello Two Hats, hello Jace, question the answers. Bari, Eric Smith, Crystal Collins, Eric Smith, Alec, who else is here? Confusing Plane. Alright, Tony Frank. Analog Oracle just gone in here. So anyway, so I'm gonna go through these images kind of randomly, and so here we have, I believe this is the ruins in Algiers, present day, modern day, you know, photograph. And then back to, and then we see right, so we see the pillars still standing, we see some of the columns, capstones and all that, and some light flooding, probably just from rain or something like that over here. So we get kind of an idea of what it would have looked like after the destruction. And then we even see, here we even see some writing, some engraving. So that's interesting. And it's just left here, you know, and that's great and everything for people to come and see. Greetings, Brown Dwarf. So yeah, that's my whole concern with this scene here. Is it's great that it's here for us to study. It's great for people to come and look at, adventurers, tourists, whatever you want to call them. But the thing that's interesting is, why did it ever fall into ruins? Why wasn't it repaired immediately after it was destroyed by fire, or earthquake, or looting, Saxon, whatever the official story is for why it fell into ruins? It doesn't really make sense, because in the present world, even what we would consider old by our standards, like a few hundred years ago, when something burnt down, we repaired it, we fixed it, and people moved back in. They didn't just abandon it. It seemed kind of silly to spend all this time to build something as magnificent as this, and then oops, oh, well, that's the end of that, and they just walk away from it. You know, so here's another example, and this is the, forget the name, unfortunately, of this ruined city, but I believe it's in Tanzania. Someone wants to correct me in the chat on the pronunciation, but I believe it was, is this the one that's in Algiers? I'm not sure, but what I'm sure of is that this was a lot nicer in its heyday. And I know that the Roman Empire fell and that had something to do with it, but it just seems like such a waste, don't you think? And then what's also interesting is the striking similarities between these ancient cities, these ancient Roman ruins, and then we see the red bricks. Here, stacked up, even like present day bricks. So that's interesting. And then we can see more red bricks here, and we would have seen what these red bricks could do. And then we see these seemingly unused ones, but they might have been used for something, but they're in really good condition compared to the counterpart here. And maybe we'll come back to that one after we've gone through a few more. So here's what I wanted to show. This is Boston in 1872. And then we look at this image here of Boston. And then we look at this image here. Or this one for that matter. So try to kind of lock that into your brain, that image. Or this one. Or even this one. And then this one. And then what else is interesting is this one. Now, I believe this is also Boston. So what we see here is just this immense amount of destruction. Enough to level all this. And you can see it's still like smoldering here. There's some smoke here. And there's some smoke here. And this is all hollowed out here. And it's just really similar to our modern day fires that we see, especially in California and other parts of the world, but most specifically probably California, where you see these whole cities kind of leveled. But I didn't want to show too much fire photography or fire damage photography from current era. That would be like another video, kind of a different subject in a way. So, hello Amy Lane. Oh, you're Mudflood Girl on Instagram. Yeah. How's it going? So here's an illustration of the Great Fire of Boston. And what's interesting about this illustration, if you look at it, you see it's on the water and all that, is you see a lot of old world structures that probably weren't rebuilt after the fire. Same kind of story with San Francisco. There's like these mysterious buildings. Now, if anybody knows what this one is over here, especially this obelisk looking one. Thanks Irish Eyes for the super chat. I have a cemetery channel on old headstones, etc. in Ireland. I find your channel very educational. Well, I'll definitely follow back because I am really into old cemeteries and I really appreciate the super chat. So I'll make sure to check that out after I'm done with this live stream. Thanks. Salty Patriot says Cali is getting reset. Yeah, California's getting reset and the whole world's getting reset if you think about it. So yeah, as I was saying about this obelisk, if anybody knows if this obelisk still exists in Boston, that would be very interesting because out of all the buildings, now I know some people are going to say it's a smokestack, but you know, like this one's maybe a smokestack, but maybe it's on fire. Who knows? I don't. Here's a spire. Here's another spire. There's a dome. There's another spire. And I know it's just an illustration. We take it at face value like we do with things that are not, you know, photographs. Then that's what we're left with. Hi, Susan Jane. I'm just kind of catching up on the chats real quick, guys. Hold on a second. Here's another illustration. And what's interesting here is it's like the same thing, but it's like different colors. You see that? It's like the person had the same view. I actually kind of like this one a little bit more. It's a little bit more moody. But anyways. And then here's an illustration of the fire in Chicago. So the thing with this one is how similar it is to this one of Boston. So this is Boston, this is Chicago, and there's just a lot of similarities obviously with the water. And then we see people crossing the bridge. Two Hat says many make the claim that obelisks were capacitors of the old world grid. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see them in ancient Egypt, we see them in ancient Mesopotamia and Samaria and Babylon, which is now Iraq. I mean, they're towers, yeah, like the towers we have now, like radio towers and cell phone towers and so forth. Definitely. 1G, yeah. 0.5G. No, actually, if you want to think about it, it would be probably higher than that. I mean, that's kind of belittling it, I suppose. But I get what you're saying, yeah. There's one from San Francisco. And we just see the guys just kind of standing around doing nothing, I mean, just kind of watching it, the inheritors. I mean, what are you going to do? But what's different about back then and now is they wouldn't let bystanders get this close to such a large structure fire. Like if we had such a large structure fire nowadays in San Francisco, it would all be roped off. These guys are just standing around like it's no big deal or anything, which is interesting. But yeah, I don't think that nowadays people be able to get that close. That's a little too close for safety reasons. I think that they would hold people back a little bit further. But the thing that you see, the similarities you see in this image, and we'll go back a few, say to this one, or probably this one more, right? I see that, and that's, like I said, I believe that's Boston. J-Star Kush says they don't seem scared at all. Yeah, they're not scared. Definitely not scared. Like, it's not like they, well, you gotta think back then, 1906, this was like a form of like sick entertainment. People didn't, people valued life, but they didn't fear death, if that makes any sense. So to them, it wasn't like they knew that it was dangerous, but they just weren't scared. People weren't as afraid back then. So to them, it was like entertainment. Probably the first big fire they ever seen in their lives, actually, to be honest. I mean, in 1906, assuming that even if they were born in San Francisco, when would they have seen such a big fire? And if they were from the old countries or the old world, so to speak, Europe or something like that, no, they probably hadn't seen a fire that big. Irish Eyes asked if I've covered the Great Fire of London. No, not yet. Are you talking about the one that happened in 1666? Because that would probably be a good one. I mean, there's no photographs, obviously, but still, it would probably be worth investigating. So here's a kind of abstract image that I found of the San Francisco fire in 1906. And it doesn't have a lot of evidence or a lot of information, but it's just a cool image. I just thought it was kind of artsy-fartsy, kind of mysterious with the windows there and another kind of obelisk kind of structure, and just these figures kind of hanging out. It's kind of cool. I don't know. But the other thing I want to do, since I got, how many people are in here? 62 people. Yeah, I'd like to keep going with the images, and then also with the deep dive. I'd like to do more of these. I'd like to set it up a little bit better. I appreciate you guys hanging out. I'm not going anywhere right now or anything, don't worry. I'm just saying that next time I'd like to have the setup a little bit better, but I felt like it was better than nothing. I know I put that post up saying I was going to do one at 10 or after 10. It's well after 10, so I appreciate you guys coming in here and sticking with me here on my first deep dive live stream. So here's Carthage, I believe. I believe it's Carthage in the Roman Empire. So that's interesting. And it's just like, Like, why would we just leave all this stuff just hanging around like this? I mean, it seems like dangerous. This, especially this one here. Like, what's up with that? We just leave that just or to fall over on somebody or something? I mean, that just seems silly. It's probably never would necessarily, but it just looks a little precarious there. I don't know what you guys think. But I know that a lot of you have seen what modern fires look like in Northern California and so on, so so forth. It's really eerie how everything's gets like shelled out, you know. And some things stay and some things don't. There's like trees that are still standing even though there's a big pile of smoldering rubble right next to it. Really interesting stuff. I don't know how that's exactly how that's explained. Pardon me. Sorry about this. Sorry about that. I was trying to get some music going, but hey, it's live, anything can happen, you know? So, that's the way that goes. So, the next image is the same area, but a different angle. And the thing about this type of film that they used back then with the sepia tone, and that's when the photograph has this kind of brownish, this kind of tan kind of tone to it, is it shows different details than the black and white, kind of gives it like a different vibe. And I happen to like these kinds of old roll photographs almost more than the black and white ones usually, because it kind of shows off the patina a little bit more, if you know what I mean, of the buildings. So once again, we see the similarities between the ancient Roman ruins and then some of these supposed fires of the New World or in the Americas, like I have shown here in Boston and Chicago. So what we also see, if we investigate further and all that, is here, which is, I believe this is Boston. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, this is either Boston or San Francisco. It's not exactly that important to the point, but what is interesting to the point is the amount of bricks that we see here on the in the foreground. In other words, what is the purpose exactly to have such a large amount of bricks just lying around, almost like they're not even, I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but almost as if they're not even being used, like they never were used, like they're just kind of lying there without mortar or anything really securing them. Like if you zoom in here, you see it's like they're not even together. It's like they're not even bonded to each other. Then there's another pile here, and I seriously doubt that they were in a hurry to rebuild, and no, they were like already here. Now, I suppose one could say that the heat might have loosened them up, but that doesn't explain. Yeah, foundations or a wall. Yeah, I get that, but look at how loose these ones are. Like they got knocked over, but they're still in really good condition. And then if this is a wall or a foundation, I mean, it doesn't look too secure to me. As in to say also, the craftsmanship of this structure, this pile of bricks, definitely doesn't match the craftsmanship of this building back here, especially before it caught on fire or whatever it is that happened to it here with this whole thing here. You know, that doesn't jive. And I'm sure that the official story probably says that this was built at the same time as this and all this here. And, you know, furthermore, if you want to split hairs, the craftsmanship of this wall doesn't match the craftsmanship of this structure back here. And once again, even after it's been burnt. So far as to say that if they had built this foundation wall the same way that they built these windows, that doesn't seem right. Especially if they had tried to build the top structure here with the same amount of work here. Urbex Sophie, what did you say, Urbex Sophie? Looks like J Star says it looks like the mortar just evaporated. Yeah, I mean that would be. That's what that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying about the. Yeah, exactly. But the only problem is, like I said, the mortar evaporating would maybe possibly explain this whole thing. But what about this? What about this pile here of perfect bricks? Not, you know, I'm sure there's an explanation, but it just seems really perfect. Like these ones are like more obliterated. Like these ones look more pulverized. And then these ones here, but, you know. I don't know. I mean, maybe we're looking at it a little bit too close. Maybe not. There's like some cargo, like a luggage, like a big box or something probably, who knows. There's some dudes walking around here. He's got suspenders on. There's another person here, but he's blurry, you know, because he was moving around too fast or something. There's another guy back here. He's looking kind of spooky. Like maybe he's got a big beard or something, who knows. There's some more figures. There's some type of apparition there. You know, all kinds of weird stuff going on. And then this one back here looks fine. This one looks fine, like it didn't get affected at all. I mean, can you imagine? You know? Can you really imagine what it would be like? Let's just take it at face value and say that the fires happened exactly the way that they said they did for the exact same reason that they said that they did. I mean, can you imagine? Just how terrifying it would be. Yeah, absolutely terrifying. So here we have a depiction of, I believe this is an illustration of what it was like in the Chicago fire of 1872 or something like that. Salty Patriot said it really was an old scary world back then. Yeah, probably. Seems to be. At least that's what they want us to think. I mean, who knows, really, right? More or less, I suppose, a rather frightening world. But they told us it was the new world, so not the old world. I got a buddy of mine, he's going to start a channel. He told me he's going to start a channel, or he already did, or something like that. He was going to call it New Scary World. And he asked me if that was all right. And I said, yeah, that's all right. And he said he's gonna document all the stuff that's going on in the present day. So I'm gonna help him with it a little bit, help it get off the ground, and then I'll let you guys know when it's live. But he's gonna document the present day scary world. Lots of scary stuff going on these days. So we'll see how that goes. And this is another one of the more recent times. I believe this one is from Chicago. I believe this is the aftermath of one of the fires in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. And of course what we see here, if they'll let me zoom in, is a column. In pretty good condition. Yeah. So that's cool, because we see kind of similarities with the old world, you know, so to speak, with the Roman ruins. And some people say that those Roman ruins aren't as old as people think, but that's a whole other subject. Yeah, very interesting subject, but another subject nonetheless. And then what else is interesting here on this kind of support pillar or support beam structure, whatever it is, and then we see this kind of stuff here carved into it, but then we see this kind of modern cutout, these ovals here, and these probably would have held like I-beams or something like that. Supposedly they would hold some type of cross beam, wood that probably burnt, you know. But what the hell was this made out of? You know? And then what kind of Roman concrete were they using here that doesn't even get scorched? You know? Like, it doesn't even have any discoloration. Like, that's pretty weird. Don't you think? You know, like, what was this shit made out of? Pardon my French. Barry Duncan says it looks more like a bomb than fire. Yeah, that's what a lot of people think. Some type of energy weapon. You know? Because you gotta think for a second, if the heat was immense enough to destroy the buildings, get them to crumble, but then leave no burn marks. You see? Like no discoloration or anything, like that's kind of weird. I mean, I think it's weird. I mean, there's a little bit of smoke damage, I guess, in some spots, if you look close enough, but all in all, yeah. It's a little weird. I don't know. Once again, maybe I'm obsessing about it. It's just something just doesn't quite seem right. Or maybe it makes total sense, but then the similarities between these and the present day fires, we see the same problems with things being completely obliterated, and then right next door everything's fine. There's another one from Chicago. And the problem that I have with this one is the problem that I have, that you see with some of the new, more contemporary fires, is you see trees being left intact. I mean, this one, I mean, look guys. This one still has a leaf on it. You know, what's up with that? Like these one has, still has leaves. There's a leaf, there's a leaf, there's a leaf. Some more leaves. Now, of course, people are going to say, well, it's charred, it's all burnt, and, you know, it's kind of hard to tell with these black and white pictures exactly. And then we see the telephone pole still standing. But then right across the street, completely burnt out. And then once again, the fancy stuff survives. Like, it's discolored, at least this time. You know, so that's cool. But even the detail's still recognizable. I mean, up here it doesn't look so good. Pretty messed up there. And there's never any roofs. I mean, the roofs are gone. I'll give them that. Horse and buggy getting props in the background, obviously. But yeah, it's Two Hat says old world tech destroyed intentionally, blamed on fire and or battle damage. Yeah. Yeah, you see that with like the destruction of Virginia. They blamed that on the Civil War. More people enthralled in this image. Yeah, exactly. They're just, you know, checking it out. No big deal. They're not worried about it falling on them or anything. Even though they technically should be, maybe. And then back here we see another hollowed out one. And then some communication wires going off frame, and then some more destruction back there. And you know, the other thing that's interesting people have pointed out is how there was so many of these fires around the same time in the world, not just in Chicago and San Francisco and Boston, but in almost all major cities there was these big mysterious fires. You know, and people say, oh, it's because buildings are made out of wood and people are living close together and too many people and learn from their mistakes, and the fire department wasn't as effective and they didn't have this and they didn't have that and they didn't have fire hydrants everywhere. And, you know, all perfectly logical explanations, I suppose, but regardless, you know, they happened. But they didn't happen for a long time after that. Once they got done rebuilding, then it was like, okay. But it's just a little weird. A little weird, but you know, who am I? Oh yeah, Atom Bomb's talking about the cannonballs. Yeah, the cannonball thing doesn't make any sense either. I agree. You look at the size of the cannonballs, and then you look at the amount of damage they did. It doesn't make any sense. And then sometimes the cannonballs are just kind of standing there in a perfect stack, and like a pyramid kind of stack, like they haven't even been used. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Excuse me. This is an illustration of the fire in, I believe this is the Chicago. I got them all kind of mixed up and I forgot to label them because I was in such a hurry to do this stream. You know, like I said, the next time I'd like to be a little bit more organized. This is kind of more or less just a test kind of thing, just to see interest and see what kind of retention. And I realize it's late. I probably would have got more people watching during the day, so I just want to kind of test out this system. I got to work out the kinks and everything. But anyways, the point is yeah, the city is on fire. But what's cool about this illustration is we see some buildings that haven't been affected by it yet. So we can still kind of see what the buildings would have been, more or less, according to this illustrator. And we see a lot of boxy stuff, not so old world looking, which is, you know, understandable. I mean, they can't all be zingers, you know, I mean, this is just an easy way to build things. I mean, not everything was grandiose, so that's fine. But what is interesting, if we zoom in, is there is at least some similarities. And then also these were probably constructed with the same amount of craftsmanship. And people will say, well, if it was all made out of cement, especially Roman cement, then why did it catch on fire so easily? And that's because, yeah, there was wood. They did use wood. But if we look and we see, the buildings that survived the best were the ones that were made out of the best materials, which was the concrete. So we see a lot of churches surviving, we see a lot of dome buildings surviving enough to be repaired. What was the main casualty was residential homes that were made after the reset, that were made by the inheritors for them to live in. So if these old world structures were dug out of the mud and then there was a big fire, some of them survived because they were built better and they were more resilient to fire, and then other ones were torn down even though they probably could have been repaired, but they chose to tear them down instead. And we see that a lot nowadays, where there's something that could be fixed, like Notre Dame, and they're not going to rebuild Notre Dame in France. You know what I'm talking about, the cathedral. I'm sure everybody is aware of Notre Dame. They're not going to rebuild it the same way that it was. They're going to use it as an excuse to build it in a completely different way. I'd be very shocked if it resembles its former self once they're done repairing it / improving it / whatever they want to call it, revamping. So I'm just going to look at the chat real quick. The Westerner says, love your vids. Little Scary World. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Love your vids, Old Scary. It's 9 a.m. in UK, says Vibes. Well, thank you, Vibes. Yeah, I forget sometimes, that this thing's like an international thing. But I would have got more people in the States watching, As some of you may know, I'm in California, so it's not extremely late, but it's not very early either. It was my wife's birthday, so I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible before starting the stream. So I don't know how many more images I got. I can always find some more and pop them over. I mean, I got a few people watching here. I got 86 people in here. So maybe when I run out, I'll grab some more or something. I can find some more real quick. We can check out some on the fly. Or if anybody's got links, you can send me a link if you want me to examine something live. If you want me to examine a photograph live on this stream, send it in the chat, and then I'll copy and paste it or something. I'll figure it out. So I believe this was, like I said, I apologize for not having these labels. I want to say that this one, I want to say that this one is actually, I think this one is San Francisco. But it might be Chicago. I don't know. I apologize once again. Hopefully you find it interesting nonetheless. Definitely the United States. All these types of photos I did definitely pull from either Boston, San Francisco, or Chicago. So it narrows it down to 3. And once again, it's really not that relevant because it's the same time period, same country, same kind of people supposedly built them, same culture, same epoch, So, I Heart Fairies. I Heart Fairies 82 says California native here. Yeah, it's not so bad, right? It's not as bad as everybody thinks it is. It isn't from here. I mean, you know, home was where you make it. I choose to be free says I think we might be in the mirror realm in the inverse, or we're just tricked and programmed into hell and heaven is the reality. Just got to leave Babylon. Yeah, Babylon's not a good place to be, especially mentally. A lot of people are living in Babylon in their head, that's for damn sure. That's a big problem. Michael Joshua Lewis keeps saying really weird things, like he types with a speech impairment. I've never seen such a thing before. It's like he types with like a strange accent, or he types like he has a speech impediment. Scary, the UFO energy beam etching from Chicago, please. I don't believe in UFOs unless you're talking about what's described in the Bible. So I don't know what you're talking about. If you have a link, send it in the chat. I don't know anything about the UFO etching in Chicago. And yeah, if you have, it's the evidence. I'm assuming you mean evidence. Yeah, okay. If you got a link, let me know. I Heart Fairy says, California has beautiful vineyards. My grandparents brought grapes from France. Love your cemetery walks. Yeah, well, you know, my grandfather was from France too, and he worked on a vineyard. And he left France. And so that's interesting. Oh, I see. Yeah, Barry Duncan says, I think he means like do weapons, direct energy. Yeah. Okay. The UFO etching is a fake. There is a real pic. It's based on if you want research. Okay. Well, I'll look into it. There's another picture. I like this one. I like the color of it, you know, and I see this one's another one of those ones that has a lot of similarities with the modern kind of fires. Daniel8279 says, is my top 5 channels. Great work. Well, thank you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for chatting. But yeah, this is a really good photo here. The composition's good too, from like a, you know, artistic standpoint or whatever. This little guy, it's really spooky here. This little person here looks like a little boy, maybe like an adolescent. There's another one. There's another one. There's possibly another one. This is a really good picture. This is like one of the best ones I've shown on this stream so far. And there's like this castle looking thing here. And then there's this ominous smokestack. You know, how strange it is that there's a fire and then the smokestacks are still shooting smoke out on the tops of their stacks. You know, that's like, there's some artistic reality, or it's not irony or anything. People get irony confused with non-irony all the time. It's okay. It's like some type of poetry going on there when you got a giant fire, the whole city's on fire, and then the smokestack. I just find that kind of hilarious in a kind of an absurd way. And then you see the rubble, you know, the classic, you know, just piles and piles of rubble. And then it just stretches, you know. And like I said before, even if you take the official story at face value, it's just absolutely terrifying what's going on here. You know, I mean, can you imagine? Cities don't catch on fire like this. Not anymore. They wouldn't. I mean, they could, I suppose, but the absolute chaos. And keep in mind that these buildings that burnt down were the buildings that were supposedly built within a couple of years. And then they rebuilt it again within a couple of years, but not the same, obviously. So that's interesting. Just kind of catching up with the chat real quick here. Yeah, I Heart Fairies, grandparents are Calu, Ranson, Pilier, Immersu, however you pronounce it. Brought grapevines, potatoes, and prunes. Wonder if related. Probably not. My grandfather didn't carry on the tradition. He didn't open up a vineyard or anything like that. Barry Duncan says John Levi, Martin Ledike, Autodidact, and Old Scary World. I'll take that as a compliment. I remember back in the old days of this channel, almost a year ago, people were saying that I was John Levi. Found that rather amusing. That's pretty funny, actually, when you think about it. You guys, I don't know if anybody remembers that back in those days in the comment sections on the early videos. People calling me John Levi, saying that I was John Levi's alter ego. Alright guys, well we're back to the first image now. So, I know we're rocking and rolling, but you know, if nobody's gonna send me any links, I mean, I could, like I said, I could look for some photos. You know what I could do? Let's put this on a slideshow at least for you guys while I look for some other images and monitor the chat. If anybody wants to send me links, I'll check the chat. Daniel8279 says, you do have a hint of his tone in your voice. Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people could, I mean, I can be chill sometimes. This is like my chill voice. I got like two voices. I got chill and like extremely pissed off. I wouldn't want to do a video with my extremely pissed off voice. So I guess when I'm in my like chill mode, I guess I do sound like I'm a little bit. So. Yeah, the slideshow is chill, right? Yeah, I just leave the slideshow on while I look for more images. Something, you know? So I guess I just try to like drag and drop these photos over as I save them. See if that works. Check the chat. In Hopi prophecies, they speak about the gourd full of ashes dropped from the sky would boil the oceans and burn the land. That's what Digital Anarchy said there in the chat. Yeah, I've heard about them Hopi prophecies. George here says, let's face it, the aqueducts were not built by the Romans. Yeah, probably not. A lot of people say that the Romans were like inheritors as well. Inheritors of that era. So let's see here. See how this works. Huh. Thought that would work. Okay, that's not going to work. Maybe if I do something like that. Once again, I apologize for this. Okay, maybe now if I go open this. Drag this over here. There we go. So yeah, here we go. Here's another one from San Francisco. Oh no, we saw this one already. It's not the one I wanted to show. Sorry about that. We already looked at that one. This is the one. I found it, guys. Hold on one second. Yeah, this is what I wanted to show here. Only problem is, hold on one second. Only problem is, I want to show it in full screen. So what we're going to do, then we go like this. Open that up. Drag it over here. There we go. So this is a really good one. If you think about it, we're gonna take a few minutes and really study this one a little bit here. Just look at what's going on up here. And I can't zoom in, unfortunately. Maybe I can. Hold on. Try something. Yeah, there we go. So look what's going on here with this classic kind of antiquitech look here. Unfortunately, it's not like super high resolution image, but that's the way that goes. I come down here. We see these soldiers here. And then we also see copyright 1906 by Stewart and Rogers. So I imagine if I looked up Stewart and Rogers at a later date, I could possibly find more images like this, of this, hopefully a little bit better quality. And, you know, what's really interesting, look at this, guys. Look at this. It's like a statue. Maybe. Alex Fletcher says, so stoked on this live stream. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. Seriously. Appreciate everybody being here. We got 101 people in the chat. That's pretty good. Pretty good for me. His tone of voice encapsulates the weariness of being reset again and again. Yeah, probably. That's what it feels like sometimes, right? I sound like me to me too, you know. I don't sound any different than I do to you guys. At least I hope not. Or hope so, I should say. Anyways, the point is I like this picture a lot. If anybody wants to comment on this one, let me zoom out a little bit more. There. That's the right format. You know, and then the other thing too that's really interesting is that these pictures survived. Like this is a print, obviously. It's not the negative. And they wouldn't draw in the negative like that. The copyright, that's like an old school watermark. Like that's how they had to watermark them back then so people wouldn't rip them off. You know, people could like crop it just like we do nowadays and we cut out the watermark. But that's essentially, you know, what we see here too, for those with keen eyes, down here in the corner, you see a roller desk. So if people know what a roller desk is, it means that this rolls up and down, and then underneath this is like a desk. So it was like a cover for your desk, but it was kind of like a modern contraption at the time for inheritors, at least by inheritor standards, because it rolled into itself back into this thing here, and then this is where you would write, and you would have all kinds of shelves and things, and keep your pens and knickknacks and envelopes and whatnots. And then down here in the shadows, you can't see, there'd be like drawers, and there'd be room to put a chair and stuff. It's like a modern workstation, or at the time it was a modern workstation. Now it would be, you know, an antique. And then we see some type of desk here, and then we see some type of possibly a speaker, like a gramophone speaker, you know. It's just interesting. They obviously pulled this out because it was worth something. They're probably pulling things out that were worth. They're trying to save anything that was worth saving. But once again, they didn't want to save the buildings. I guess the buildings were beyond repair. If anybody knows what this building is, ADM acid, brainwash shoulders, smoking toxic tobacco, and beating people in the street. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Probably the toxic tobacco part, like, probably the closest kind of thing there. Can you zoom in on the dome? Yeah, sure, why not? There. As good as you're gonna get. It's pretty pixelated, unfortunately. But that's the dome. Top left. It just gets more pixelated though. You know, that's the problem. But it's missing a piece. Is that what you're talking about? That dome amplifies? Yeah, probably. Makes sense to me. Especially if there's a nice bell in there. Alright, so I'm gonna zoom out because that's weird to leave it like that. Yeah, it's a good image, huh? I think so. Looks like a mausoleum. Yeah, a little bit. I guess the dome part, especially. See what else we can find. Oh, here's a good one. Never seen this one before. You guys are gonna get a kick out of this. Unless you've seen it before. Because if you've seen it before, there you go. Seen it before, let me know in the chat. This is a good one. This is a good one. Never seen this one before. And this kind of puts to rest certain theories that certain people had about certain people having an exclusivity, I should say, to San Francisco. Sometimes I get comments and people ask me, where's the more African Americans? Where's the more melanated people? They say that all the inheritors were white and all this kind of stuff, and this photo kind of disproves that, doesn't it? And they got the same kit, you know. They got the hats, they got the whole deal. So, it's really interesting. Probably post this one to the Instagram tomorrow or something. It's really good. I like how this guy is looking at the camera. Let's zoom in here. Pretty good resolution too. Not the best, but decent resolution. These three hats down here. It's pretty spooky. But I'm absolutely terrified to have to deal with this little reset that they pulled on San Francisco. Very fascinating. I mean, you want to talk about fascinating. I think we'll switch gears. Wait a minute. I think I might have found something really interesting. No, never mind. Same one. Although, no, I think I will show you guys this one. Because this one's, I think it's taken at the same time. See? They look about the same. And then you see just a mix of characters here. So what really struck me about this photograph was the length of this person's hair and the thickness of the braid. Like, that's a lot of hair. You know? Taped off hair. And then these pants, I almost thought they were like like some type of martial arts pants, but now I'm not sure. If anybody knows in the comments or in the chat, let me know. Anybody know what kind of pants these are? Are they Chinese? Or are they indigenous people? Really interesting. Then over here, there's some inheritors here. And they're all technically inheritors. If you think about it. I mean, they all got the same clothes. You notice nobody's wearing rags? You know, like everybody has nice clothes. Really weird. I know there was rag people too. They're never in the pictures. Unless they're like the main point of the picture. But you hardly ever see them just kind of chilling in the background. Yeah, no kids. J-Star says no kids. Yeah, you're right, no kids. What the hell? Good point. That's a good point. No homeless junkies back then. Yeah, that's true. Well, they had opium dens. But yeah, they weren't out in the street, that's for sure. Yeah, no incubator babies either, says the Westerner. Benjamin Nothing says photo looks like people were placed there. Yeah, I mean, especially like this guy and this guy. I mean, this adds a very like stoic, you know, I think it's a woman because of the shoulders, but I could be wrong. This person's looking off into the smoke here, adds a certain amount of poignancy to the photograph. So, see what else we can't find. Got another one here, but the resolution might be shitty, so we'll see. Yeah. It's gonna be crappy. But kind of get the point at least of what's going on here. This one's pretty spooky, huh, guys? Jesse Vaughn, Senior Stationary Earth Scientist, thanks for coming in. I didn't know you were here. Did you just get in here? Everybody should go check out that guy's channel. He's got some good points. So yeah, this photo's pretty spooky. But then you see like the modern signage plastered on it, which is like really contradicts the whole aesthetic. I guess that's just the way they did things back then. Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate it. So yeah, let's see what else we can find. I don't really like the resolution on that, but it's a good one. It'd be better if the resolution was better. You know, the great thing about these, well, here's a good example. So remember earlier in the stream we were showing the Roman ruins, like the ones that are in Tangier and in Algeria. So I just found this one here in San Francisco. See? And it has that same kind of vibe, doesn't it? Where it's like the grid, you know, everything was like gridded, perfectly straight, and then just whacked down. You guys see what I mean? And then what's up with this one? Anybody know what building that is? It survived. Everything around it got completely destroyed. On this one, the roof is still intact. And then there's like an onion dome here on top of this tower. But yeah, like I was saying, what's great about the 1906 pictures is this is all the stuff, because there was like two different San Franciscos. There was the pre-1906 San Francisco, and then the post-1906 San Francisco. And people have tried to figure out what some of the buildings are that were around before 1906 that didn't get rebuilt, that didn't get repaired or anything, they just disappeared. And people look at old photographs like ones like this, and you see what survived but didn't survive at the same time. In other words, like things that could have been saved weren't saved, they were just torn down. We see like really dense buildings, you know, like this one over here. Zoom in a little bit more. What's up with that? This one here. Just seems like it's really dense. Seems like it's really thick, and like a lot of people could live in it, or a lot of things could get done inside of it. It just seems very large here. And then got this one over here by itself, survives. Over here. This one. What's up with this? One looks pretty spooky all by itself. The Westerner says, I was always haunted by San Francisco, now I know why. Yeah, San Francisco's spooky as hell, man. I spent a lot of time up there. It's got a weird vibe to it. And then also what's really funny, I just noticed about this image, this particular print at least, is if you look at the writing here, it says ruins of San Francisco. Ruins of San Francisco. Now, nowadays, if a city caught on fire, I don't know if we would call them ruins. Aren't ruins usually reserved for things that are old? Or was that just the vocabulary at the time, just to call anything that was destroyed ruins? I think it's in ruins, so it's the ruins. But interesting choice of words nonetheless, especially in hindsight. Lou2 says apparently too early / late for trolls. Yeah, well, if there was trolls in the chat, like, you know, like obviously like people trying to troll for real, not just joke around, then I'd probably boot him if I caught him. So. How far does the street grid go? The old street grid for the city of San Francisco went pretty far. Let's see. This isn't the best resolution. I have a video and the thumbnail is like a map. And that was a really good map, if I could find that. And it was pre 1906 and it showed the borders really well. I think it was from like 1896. This image isn't really the best example to show the border, but they go off pretty far to answer your question. Because this is the bay here. This would be the bay, not the ocean. Because San Francisco is a peninsula, essentially. But yeah, it goes off pretty far. You know, now that I'm thinking about it too, I could show that map that I'm talking about. Because it's a good map, it's worth showing. Even though it's a drawing. See if I can find it real quick. I want to thank everybody for coming in here and checking out the live stream. I know it's late for some of you guys, so I really appreciate it. See what else we can find. Here's a good one. Resolution wasn't too good though, unfortunately. Oh, here's a good one. Sorry about that. So here's one. Let's zoom in a little bit. Pretty decent resolution. Now, what caught my eye about this one, is a couple things. One of the things being this point here, classic kind of European dome, energy receptor, and then this this thing here. What's up with this? Anybody know? Anybody have any idea what this thing is here? I don't know what that is. I know this is a good picture. You know, it's almost like this darn thing is just like floating. Like, okay, so maybe there's some support here, just a little pixelated. And it's an odd object, whatever it is. Water level meter. Yeah, why would a water level meter be up that high? That's like at least like 2-3 stories up the bottom. I've never seen something like that before. I guess it could have been a sign that got burnt up. And it's just like the frame of a sign, I guess. But this was like before that period. I don't think they did signs like that back then. But just look how old this building is. And they're trying to tell you that this building is only... So if this is 1906, the very latest it would have been like from the 1850s, so it's like less than 50 years old, probably. That's absurd. And then they would probably tell you that it only took like 6 months to build this thing or something like that. Ridiculous. And people sometimes they ask me like what my deal is with the inheritors, and they say, oh, everybody dressed the same. It's totally normal for everybody to dress the same. It's just the way it was, you know. Let me show you guys a picture of why I think it's weird. You tell me you don't think this is weird? That they're all dressed the same and they all look the same, basically? It wasn't that long ago, guys. We had centuries to develop our own personal style before we supposedly started immigrating here. Speaking from a European American perspective, or whatever you want to call it, a white American perspective with lineage based in Europe, supposedly. So why did they all dress like this? You know what's weird about the Americas, when you really think about it, guys? Is the United States of America, and this kind of goes for Canada as well, is it's like we started all over. Even though we had all the knowledge of the old world, supposedly, the European world, the old countries. And Africa and Asia, for that matter. But it was like we started all over. You know, all these things were getting... all these new inventions were getting patented, and all these new business models were being explored, and touted as the next big thing. It's like, don't you think somebody would have thought about that? Do you think somebody would have figured it out before? You know, like, amazing. Like selling hot dogs out of a cart. Like, that was like a big deal. Like, nobody thought of that before. Strange. And sodas, you know, like Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. Like, seriously, it took until, like, what was it, you know, the Coca-Cola was invented. It took till, like, the mid-1800s for somebody to figure out how to make Coca-Cola. See what else we can find. Oh, I've seen this one before. This is a good one. Yeah, check this one out, guys. This is a pretty good one. Zoom in a little bit here. Burning of San Francisco. Once again with the wordage that we don't use anymore for some reason. Now, why would it say burning? You know, and I know people are going to say it's just a different way of saying the same thing. But once again, you know, we don't use language like that. And it's really interesting, like, you know, if you guys have watched a lot of American television or not, but you might recognize these particular structures here. A lot of people probably recognize these houses here. They're called the Painted Ladies. And I don't know which one exactly, if any of these ones here in the photograph, but more or less these ones, one of these ones, this kind of was the house that they used in that show. Yeah, with that guy that everybody's talking about in the chat now. Yeah. Yeah, that one. It was about a house that was over occupied, and it had too many people living in it, so it's a pretty good name, easy to remember. It's like a reference to poker. They never played poker on that show, so I'm sure there was a lot of card players that were disappointed. But that's the way that goes, right? So once again, you know, with the clothes, you know, the inheritor gear. It's insane. You're telling me that all this was built out in less than 50 years? Have you guys ever seen what they say that San Francisco, according to the official story, what San Francisco looked like? What San Francisco looked like in 1849, according to the illustrations? And this was just not counting how long it would take to survey the land and figure out how to build a grid and plan it out so it made sense and everything. But they just build. Just build without without planning it out. So that's why I say like 50 years. I know it's a little bit more than 50 years from 1849 to 1906, but that's kind of the other absurdity about it, is saying that they could survey everything, get everything all mapped out, and just try to find a good example of what San Francisco supposedly looked like in 1849. It was like very pastoral. And it is a good one. Nice high-res one. So what I'm about to show you guys is what people said that San Francisco looked like when in 1849, which was supposedly a very pivotal year. So this is what it looked like in July 1849. Yeah, I mean, these are nice buildings. Don't get me wrong, these are like nice buildings and everything. But, I mean, like I said. And then just start build. But see, this is a drawing, not a photograph. And this isn't the ocean. You dig? This is the bay. Okay, so you got guys camping in tents, making beans on the fire. The Westerner says, we are the old scary world, memories under attack, don't forget. Yeah, no, I have a pretty good memory. If I forget, we probably got bigger problems. Anyways, so I got some pilgrim looking guys. This guy's telling a story. You can tell by the way his hands put out. That's a classic storytelling gesture. Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty chill. Nothing to complain about, really. But so we go from this and then in a very short amount of time, try to find a good one. Yeah, here's a good one. So keep that image in mind, or maybe I'll try to get both up at the same time. So from that, and then we go to this. Let's see how we get it in there. Yeah. And then to this. How does that work? To this. From that to this. That's crazy. Right? This? With horses and donkeys and shovels and, I mean, what the hell? You guys remember the picture that we were looking at a second ago? I mean, okay, so I'm gonna let you guys think about this for a second. I'm trying to set it up so that it makes sense. I mean, honestly, I'd rather live in the old one here. I mean, this seems like manageable, you know? Like, this isn't too bad of an arrangement. I'll be right back. Just want to thank everybody for watching. Good night, forget everything. Okay, I'm back. We still got 94 people in here. Yeah, I know, random noise videos are dumb. It's not a random noise video. I was talking a second ago, I just had to get up for a second. If you're just joining us, we were comparing 1849 to 1906 San Francisco. So, once again, you know, I'll point out here that this is 1849. Okay, go down. See? San Francisco in July 1849. Present site of San Francisco Stock Exchange. So, where exactly is the San Francisco Stock Exchange? It's obviously in the financial district, right? So that'd be like close to downtown, close to the Embarcadero, obviously the water. Okay, it's too bad that it's not the exact same vantage point. That would be really interesting, but it's close enough. So all of these buildings here, all this stuff, not to mention a grid, you know, we can imagine what the grid looks like, was built out here. So there, so from something like this to something like this. Make this one bigger. We'll go back to this one. Hopefully some people hadn't seen this one from the, so this is the water here, right? So here's the ships. So we can imagine that the ships would be in relatively the same place. So then we go here, and then here's the ships. Because the harbor was established, so we can kind of surmise that the harbor wouldn't have changed too much. So where were we? Here. So they're here. So, like I stated, we can't say that it was 57 years exactly, because it would have taken at least a few years to level all this out and plan this out, plan out this grid. Look how far this grid goes. And look how relatively straight it is. I mean, you got some leans here because it's kind of bumpy, and you know, but it's relatively straight. We got some more grids. But started with this. And I realized that, you know, the better part of 5 decades, 4 solid decades is a long time. Like, I'm not stupid. Like, I understand that. But, you know, it's just, it's a bit much, people. So we've been going for 108 minutes, or an hour and 8 minutes. Not sure anymore. I know that YouTube doesn't like super long videos, super long live streams. And, you know, this went pretty well, honestly. And so I'll probably try to do another one and try to have the kinks worked out a little bit. I want to thank everyone for being here. And I think we're just going to go back to this comparison real quick. And, you know, you tell me, we're going to take a few more minutes to kind of look at this here. And then you tell me what you'd rather live in. Seriously. I want to see in the chat one, and type 1 for 1849. You'd rather live in this kind of pastoral community here where everybody seems to be getting along and having fun, just kind of living off the land and the sea. Or if you'd rather live in this hellish nightmare, this hellscape here, with all these people and all these big dense built, you know, and all this stuff just crammed in here. Seeing a lot of ones. A lot of ones. Yeah, I don't think Capilicious 420 says that he would prefer not to live in an urban jungle. I don't think anybody actually likes it. I think everybody who lives in these modern cities like New York City and Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco and Tokyo, I think it's all a cope. And they feel stuck and they just try to make the best out of it. But I also don't think that this drawing down here is real. I think it's too perfect. I don't think that this is actually like how things were. You know, and this illustration wasn't even done. It wasn't even made at the time, because we see that now. I say present site of the SF Stock Exchange. So it was obviously produced after 1849. It's a dramatization. It's a reenactment. You know, it's a way to change history. So, like I said, I think it's just something to ponder. You know, official story is that we went, and like I said, sometimes we just have to go off the official story. Sometimes it's fun to go off the official story. So official story is that we went from this to this in, you know, basically like 40 something years. Because once again, you gotta subtract a few years for just the planning, you know, like I said, to make the grid, and you know, it's absurd. You know, all these houses are very quaint and sensible, and then we go to this. So even official story doesn't make sense, because I mean, come on. I mean, and then furthermore, I mean, I could just talk about this all night. I Choose to Be Free says the top looks like Dark City. Yeah, Dark City for sure. If anybody hasn't seen that film, you should check it out. Just reading the chats before I leave. I'm not sure how to pronounce this person's screen name, but they say that their great-grandfather signed a treaty in 1870. I guess that was also a staged event of some sort. You know, not necessarily a staged event, but you know, what would have prevented a treaty from being signed? Did they talk about all the buildings? Did they talk about? I mean, that's not really. Yeah, I guess it is. Well, you said it yourself. It's off topic. You know, all I know is you weren't there. That we can say with a certain amount of certainty. Barry has a good point. She says, need the population to build it for starters. Yeah, that's the other thing. You know, I go to some of these cemeteries and there isn't enough people that would have been born soon enough and have been old enough to have built the cities. Lucia says, yeah, where did all the manpower come from? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Where did all the manpower come from? J Star Kush says number one is a fantasy, sadly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's too idyllic, right? It's too pastoral. It's like something that you would see when you close your eyes. You know? This image here is like, it's like a dream. It's like a fantasy. It's like what you would expect things to look like, because from what you've been taught. Like that this is what built this. This is a freaking nightmare. the top image. I mean, just look how vastly different it is. Not just in the structures, and you know, the fire and the smoke obviously adds an element of fear and turmoil and all that. But seriously, like, it's, you know, come on. It's like night and day. It's like black and white. It's like good and evil. It's like every other dichotomy. And let's just pretend for a second that number one is real, that the bottom, that the 1849 image is real. Why would they, what would have possessed them to take something so perfect and seemingly functional and non-invasive to the land and then turn it into this? Even if this wasn't on fire, it would be very unpleasant compared to this. You know, people would say, well, it was so nice, it attracted so many people, and they had to build more and more and more and more and more. You know, what about just putting like a sign that says we're full? Go somewhere else, go further down the shore. Why did they expand up when they didn't have to? There was plenty of land, they could have just kept going north or south. Why did they have to stay and concentrate it all into one place? Because there was a concerted effort to do so, because when you shove people, and this is a proven fact, when you shove people into densely populated urban areas, everybody's energy and vibrational levels feed off of each other, and it creates negative energy, and then you have vampiric parasite, you know, type vampire type people. And I don't mean that in like the Dracula sense. I mean that in the metaphysical sense, that they feed off of fear and negative thoughts and strife and hardship. These big cities like San Francisco and New York and Chicago, they're energy vortexes. That's what high-rise apartment buildings and condominiums are. I don't care if they're luxury tier buildings with all the amenities and bellhops and concierge. They're energy vortexes. You share the energy with the people that you live with. That's why you want to surround yourself with people who have a positive outlook and aren't negative psychic vampires. Now, if we want to entertain the idea that both of these scenarios were real, which one do you think had less psychic vampires living in it? You know? Barry says, cities make you cranky, no patience, angry energy. Loyal Tangi said, sports arena, steal your loosh. Sean G says, circuit boards. Jesse Vaughn, senior stationary earth scientist, says, water and energy. J Star Kush says, if it was real, the only reason to cram in with each other would be if they were hiding from worse things than people. Yeah. Well, like I said a few minutes ago, now we got even more people than when I was going to sign off. Yeah. And like I said, I could keep talking about it and talking about it. Fascinating subject. Very fascinating subject. Show you guys another one. You guys ever seen this one? This is the original City Hall of San Francisco. This one's really interesting. Because you see, in this image, you see the mixture, you see the steel framework, and then you see the columns here. It's all twisted, crumbling. This is the city hall that they couldn't save. So then they built the one that's still there. And like in every other picture, we see these bricks. We always see this convenient pile of rubble. And then what's up with these pipes here? What's up with these, this convenient pile of pipes here? Very interesting. Like I said, I could keep going. And find some more images. There's a good one. This is a good one because this is kind of like looking into this one, to this this green toned one. In fact, I think it might actually be right in this quadrant right here. So then we have this image. We have this image here. And the reason why I think that it's kind of a microcosm of the other image is because if you look closely, okay, you see this base here, this podium, this structure here, and then you look here, you see this, you see this here, and then you see that there. So it's kind of like zooming in on this whole scene. See all these people? Right? So that's the thing that people don't understand exactly about this whole looking into this thing, I guess, is despite what the reality is to some people, it's still looking into the past. And that's what's great about it is no matter what your conclusions are after looking at old photographs and studying old maps, you're still looking at old photographs and studying old maps. You see? So it's still educational. It's just you might run into somebody that has a different conclusion after looking at the same evidence. And then they say like, there's something wrong with you because you don't want to just move on and accept the official stories. But that doesn't make any sense because regardless, it was a very interesting time that has a lot of inconsistencies, and the records back then weren't all that great. And then we get into the whole thing of like who was writing the records and who was the archivist, and there's just a lot of, just a lot of problems, and I'm just not buying it. Sorry. These buildings look way older. Like these ones weren't even affected by the fire yet. Like maybe eventually the fire spread to where these people are, and these people had to move even further back. But as it is right now, there's no way that there'd be this many people all huddled together if this building was on fire, or that building, or this building, but these buildings already look old. Zoom in a little bit here. Why would they build buildings like this in San Francisco, California? Like, this is 1906. This picture was taken. But most of these buildings weren't built in the 1850s. They were built supposedly like in the 1870s. So they weren't really that old. And like, why would they build them like that? It seems like really unnecessary, like a lot of work. And then the other interesting thing is, after the fire in 1906, after the earthquake and the fire, supposedly everybody just like kind of just stuck around and helped rebuild, and they rebuilt it in like 7 years. And then that's like a whole other thing, what it looked like, right before one of the World's Fairs in 1915. But that doesn't make any sense because supposedly like most of the houses got burned down. So where did these people live while they were rebuilding it the second time? And then they got rid of all the graveyards and they moved it all south to Colma. Colma, California is like, it's right on the border of San Francisco essentially. And I've been there a few times. I got some videos where I walk around and look for graves old enough to have been the people who built the original San Francisco in 1849. So, like I said, despite what your, notions and preconceptions, or people you talk with, just explain it to them the way you want to explain it to them. Articulate yourself the way that you'd like to articulate yourself, but try to maybe just as a reminder, think back to this live stream, think back to this video, and really ask them or ask yourself how we went supposedly, according to the official story, how we went from this to this. It's just, it's really funny. It's kind of sad too, I guess, technically, if it's true. And it's the same story for every city too. It's not just San Francisco. And here's another good example. I found another one from here's another one. This is supposedly San Francisco, part of the San Francisco area in 1849. What does this say? Anybody, can anybody read this? I know it's pixelated, but can anybody make that out? We notice there's a triangle, and obviously it says house. And someone said it says tolerance house. Temperance, maybe temperance, like anti-alcohol. The temperance movement, but I thought that came like way later. But that came like the 1920s. Anybody have any idea? Yeah, I thought it said temperance house. That's where people were tempered. Yeah. All-seeing eye. Right. Masonic. Well, anyway, that's supposedly what it looked like. So, the other problem is how did people build like this? And I know about buildings like this. Like there's still plenty of buildings that are this old that are still survived in the Bay Area because they were kept up, they were maintained, repairs were done. But how do you go from building stuff like this, like these simple wood frame structures and clapboard and shingles and dirt road and all that, and then you go to this? Like, it's quite the leap. Like, we still build buildings supposedly like this, more or less. I mean, they're a little bit more high tech, but like if it was so easy, right? It was just so easy to have steel and go from like these like where the hell do you even see buildings like these black and white one here besides the Old West for a very short amount of time? Like people just threw these up like no problem. Like they milled all the wood and milled it good enough to build with, nice and clean and straight. They just threw these up like on a weekend, and then like had a beer or a sarsaparilla afterwards. Like the whole town just got together, right? That's what they tell us. Pretty much, that's pretty much the official story is like a bunch of cowboys, like just like built these, like in 72 hours, like just like threw them up, and then that was good enough for a little while, and then they went to like this, and and then that, and that. So that'd actually be like a pretty good example too of the progress that we're told. Right? It's from this to this. Because this is a photograph. At least this is a photograph. The other one is just a drawing. As if one has more validity than the other. Which I guess it technically does, right? I mean, as long as we're being fair. Sean G says, I restore really old stone buildings and find red brick and tiles behind, or in red tiles, beautiful glass colored like pearls, and rebar and foundations. Well, rebar is actually an old technology when you think about it. People have been reinforcing it. Not Tartarian. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that, obviously, Barry. I know you know that I don't think that. What I'm saying is how did they build so damn fast? I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm just saying I'd like to know. Because as some of you may know, I do a little bit of construction and handyman work and light construction, you know, household kind of stuff. You know, decks, fences, drywall, you know, just odds and ends kind of stuff. No big buildings or anything. And it takes a considerable amount of time. You know, with power tools, you know, yeah, it's not a, but I mean, suppose these guys were like half drunk most of the time, and they could just throw up these buildings. And then once again, within a period of about 40 years, give or take, they're on to this. And not just in San Francisco, but everywhere in the world where you see, you know, buildings like this, the domes and the whole thing. Like everybody just got together and just decided they were all going to build the same way. It's just, it's amazing. It's like we keep going through this cycle. We keep going through this cycle over and over again, where we build like primitive, something in between, and we get here, and then there's a reset. And we've seen it time and time again. We've seen it in ancient Greece, we've seen it in ancient Rome, we've seen it in the Far East, in the Near East, in the Middle East, here in North America, in South America. And it always happens. And it always happens simultaneously. It's like there's a convergence, and then there's a collapse. Like once people start to really figure out what's going on, something just coincidentally happens. So, very interesting. So I think I'm going to leave it this time for real. I'm going to leave it on this this juxtaposition here of the two San Franciscos, the 1849 and the 1906. And once again, I'll ask everyone watching to really consider how we went from this down here to this up here. Not just in an architectural sense or commerce, but in a spiritual sense. I mean, it just doesn't seem right. Very mysterious why we would choose to build such an ugly city out of this, if this was true. Or take the palaces and then surround them with these junky buildings and fill them up with people that didn't know how to, operate. So, either way, something isn't right. How this crushed that and became that. So, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everybody for the super chats. Thanks everybody. And we'll try to do this again next week.